There's basically no way that BYD can logically operate and sell to Americans.
When the US slapped a 100% tariff on BYD,
A 100% tariff on electric vehicles made in China.
the company basically shrugged, turned around, and started selling to everyone else. Most people looked at that and thought, okay, America wins that round.
But the more you dig into what BYD has been doing since then, the more you realize that all of this may have been exactly what BYD might have needed.
A couple of years ago, most people outside of China had never heard of BYD, which is honestly wild when you understand the size of this company.
BYD stands for Build Your Dreams. A bit cheesy, I know.
It was founded in 1995 in Shenzhen, China, and here's the thing that most people don't know about them. They didn't start out making cars, they started out making batteries. That might sound like a small detail, but it completely changes how you understand their whole advantage. While American giants like Ford and GM were bolting electric motors onto existing gas-powered platforms, BYD was building electric vehicles from the ground up around a battery that they already knew better than anyone. So the car was almost secondary. Now, Warren Buffett caught on to this in 2008. He's famously skeptical of car companies, but he saw that BYD wasn't just a car company, it was a battery company that also happened to make cars. So he puts his money in it and eventually makes around 30 times his investment back.
And we all remember what Elon Musk said about BYD in 2011.
Why do you laugh? BYD is trying to compete. Why do you laugh?
Have you seen their car?
Now, by 2024, BYD is outselling Tesla globally in electric vehicles. Their flagship sedan, the Han, genuinely holds its own against even a BMW 5 Series. And their entry-level model, the Seagull, costs about $10,000. That's crazy. Fully electric, $10,000, and it's a real car. No Western automaker is anywhere close to building something like that at that price. And that's the part that makes Washington very nervous.
Okay, so it's 2024. The Biden administration raises tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles to 100%.
So let's say a BYD that costs $20,000 to import lands on American soil as a $40,000 car. So obviously the price advantage now is completely gone. Now, officially, the reason was not about protecting American jobs and domestic manufacturing. And that's a real concern with real history behind it. When I went to Detroit last year, I saw firsthand how huge the auto industry in the US is. The UAW is a serious political force, and the memory of what happened to American manufacturing in the 80s and 90s is still pretty raw in a lot of those communities. But the deeper motivation was simpler than that. It was about what happens actually if a $10,000 BYD Seagull actually shows up at a dealership with no tariff attached. Because that car doesn't just compete with American EVs, but it makes most of them look absurdly overpriced. The cheapest electric vehicle you can buy in America right now is about $25,000, even if you assume you get federal tax credits from that.
Here's where most of the coverage dropped the ball.
When BYD didn't fight the tariffs, a lot of analysts called it a loss for China. What they missed, though, is that BYD had already started building a company in a completely different direction.
Thailand was one of the first places they moved seriously.
They opened a manufacturing plant in Rayong in 2024, right in the middle of territory that Toyota had basically owned for decades. Japan had spent years building car culture in Thailand, and Toyota's roots there run deep. But within a year, BYD was the top-selling EV brand in that country. And the key thing is they weren't just shipping cars in, but they were actually building them here, hiring locally, becoming part of the economy rather than just like a foreign brand on the lot.
Vietnam came next.
It's a fast-growing economy, young population, and a generation of buyers who never really had a strong attachment to gas-powered cars to begin with. I was there when VinFast, the Vietnamese car company, was trying to go big and preparing to enter the US.
Right now, the world runs on power plants that take years to build, cost billions of dollars, and leave behind waste we don't really know what to do with. The outdated infrastructure is slow, expensive, and a major headache for energy companies and governments alike. We burn fossil fuels to fill the gaps, and we all know how that's going. Relying on coal and gas means volatile prices, reliance on foreign supply, and an ever-increasing climate crisis. Copenhagen Atomics is tackling this challenge, and they're the sponsor of today's video. So what if we could build a nuclear reactor that's the size of a shipping container, and manufacture them in a factory like cars, and even run them on fuel that's actually safer and cleaner than what we use today? That's exactly what they're doing. They're a Danish company building what are called molten salt reactors. So instead of using solid fuel rods Like traditional nuclear plants, these reactors use liquid fuel. That means they can be optimized to produce much cheaper energy and generate no long-term waste, and they're small enough to actually mass produce. So imagine clean energy at scale and faster than we've historically been able to do it. Check them out at Copenhagen Atomics, link in the description. Now back to the video.
So BYD comes in with distribution deals and showrooms, and manufacturing talks are already in progress right now.
Then Brazil, which was a real statement here to go to Brazil.
BYD committed over $600 million to a factory in Brazil. That's a long-term bet on South America, the entire continent as a whole, and Brazil serves as its hub.
What I've noticed is actually Mexico is getting some of the most attention, and for good reason. It's right next door to the US.
Because of USMCA, vehicles manufactured in Mexico with enough local content can enter the US market at much lower tariff rates. BYD has been actively exploring manufacturing there, and Washington is watching the situation very closely. The fact that they're even exploring it kind of just tells you how carefully they're thinking several moves ahead.
Europe is a bit messier.
The EU did impose additional tariffs after investigating Chinese EV subsidies, but they were softer about it than the US. And countries like Germany are genuinely torn because their automakers sell huge volumes of cars in China and can't really afford to start a fight here.
So if I zoom out and look at okay, where is BYD planting flags right now?
Clearly see Southeast Asia, South Asia, Latin America, parts of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. The US and Canada are basically the only major markets sitting outside that expansion, but I don't think that BYD seems particularly bothered by that. I mean, the rest of the world is big enough.
Here's the part that's really worth looking at, in my opinion. The United States has about 335 million people.
That's about 4% of the world's population. It's a wealthy, important market, but the other 96% of people on Earth live somewhere else, and a huge portion of them are about to buy their first car. BYD seems to have decided that winning those people over is their entire game. And the reason that matters goes way beyond car sales. It's about leverage.
When a foreign company wants into your market,
you have something to offer or withhold. You can negotiate, set conditions, use market access as a card in a bigger conversation. But when that company looks at your market and decides they're fine without it, at least for now, well, that card disappears. You can't use access as leverage with someone who isn't really asking for it. And what BYD is building in these countries goes just way beyond selling cars, because every factory they open in, let's say Thailand or Brazil, is creating local jobs, which means local governments start having real interest in BYD actually doing well. Every charging network they build becomes public infrastructure that communities depend on. Local suppliers grow around their operations.
This is actually the same playbook that Japan used in the 70s and 80s to get its automotive dominance. Except BYD has more capital, more backing, and it's moving faster.
Now, the hope on the American side is that BYD will eventually want back in, that a market this size is just too hard to actually walk away from forever. Maybe.
So the big question that nobody in Washington seems to have a clear answer for is, what's the actual plan here?
See, tariffs buy time, but time only matters if you use it. The protection American automakers have been given was supposed to create breathing room to close the gap, to figure out how to build a compelling EV at a price that regular people can actually afford. But that hasn't happened yet.
At some point, the tariff question gets revisited.
And when it does, the conversation is going to look very different than it does today. It probably won't be about whether to let BYD in. It'll be about what it actually cost to be the holdout, the one major market that kept the door shut while the rest of the world moved on and built their transportation systems around someone else's technology and ecosystem.
That's the stakes. It's not really about the cars,
but about who ends up owning the foundation that the next century of transportation gets built on. And that race is happening right now, whether America is allowing BYD or not.
So here's what I can tell you.
If you want a real-time signal to watch, keep an eye on Mexico, because whether BYD breaks ground on a plant there and how Washington responds to that will tell you a lot about how the next chapter plays out.
Drop your prediction in the comments. Does BYD find a way into the American market by 2030? Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. It helps me massively and it's free. And I'll see you in the next one.